So Martin Shkreli, the Pharma bro who raised the cost of a life-saving drug by 5,000%, was ordered by a federal judge to repay $64.6 million. Let's talk about it in today's video.
I want to ask you I want to plead with you to use any remaining influence you have over your former company to press them to lower the price of these drugs. You can look away if you like, but I wish you could see the faces of people, no matter what Ms. Retzlaff says, who cannot get the drugs that they need. And by the way, it's the taxpayers. Somebody's paying for these drugs.
Hi, I'm Mike Greiner. I'm a lifelong Democratic activist who's concerned about the direction our country is taking. If you share my concerns, maybe you could like this video, subscribe to this channel, even click that little bell that will notify you when I post something new. So you just saw Martin Shkreli testifying before Congress, demonstrating why he might be one of the most hated people in America. He is, without a doubt, a jerk. There's just no other way to put it. I mean, even Tucker Carlson was shocked by his behavior. Check this out.
You've gone onto Twitter and just gone like crazy. So election, I can't even read some of these because they're too over the top, but election night you tweeted this to Hillary Clinton. I've always hated you, you stupid blank. Time to close the Clinton Foundation. No more influence to peddle, Hillary Clinton. You go on, you attack celebrities, Britney Spears you attack, and then, I mean, I could just go on and on and on. Bernie Sanders, you're a loser who doesn't understand economics or business. Keep my name out of your mouth. Take your communism to a country that wants it.
Well, that's what happened, right? I mean, this country rejected socialist and communist policies.
Well, sure, but your strategy has been to, rather than pull back, just to bull forward.
I look at our president-elect. Being honest and authentic, even if it's imperfect, is something that Americans like. I could have easily done all of the, we hired consultants for millions of dollars that'll tell me the right way to look and the right way to act in front of news cameras. But at the end of the day, I can only be myself, and that's why I think one of the reasons why Donald Trump is our president-elect.
Did anybody advise? Did you have any advisors say, you know what, if you really want to rehabilitate your image, go on Twitter and give the finger to Hillary Clinton?
No one's told me that.
Okay, nobody did?
No.
Now that's really saying something for Tucker Carlson to be shocked. But Martin Shkreli did his best to become America's poster child for corporate greed and pharmaceutical profiteering. A former hedge fund executive who started on Wall Street at 17 years old, he bought the company Turing Pharmaceuticals and installed himself as head of it. At that point, he then had his company buy the rights to a certain drug, Daraprim, which treated life-threatening parasitic infections in babies and people with AIDS. Definitely groups you want to try to profiteer off of. Immediately upon purchasing the rights to the drug, he raised the price from $13.50 a tablet to $750, a 5,000% increase. His move prompted the justified ire of Democratic elected officials who called him to testify before Congress, of Hillary Clinton, Bernie Sanders, and just about anybody else who was paying attention. In response to the criticisms, as Tucker Carlson pointed out, Shkreli did not back down. In fact, he doubled down and went head-to-head with people, with a Twitter finger that we haven't seen since the likes of Donald Trump. The problem for Shkreli was, as it turns out, he had a few skeletons in his closet. Namely, he had used funds from one company that he owned to pay back investors in another company he owned. That is what's commonly known as a pyramid scheme, which is illegal, by the way. With his activities drawing so much attention from so many people, one group who found his activities very interesting were federal prosecutors, who charged him with 3 counts of fraud, for which he was convicted, and for which he is currently serving a 7-year prison sentence. To make matters worse for Shkreli, while he was out on bond awaiting trial, he tweeted out an offer of $5,000 for a sample of Hillary Clinton's hair while she was out on a book tour. In essence, he basically was offering to pay someone to assault her, something that didn't go over very well with the judge, who then revoked his bond and threw him in jail. So in some respects, Shkreli's biggest problem, aside from the fact that he's a greedy MFer, is that he's just a jerk who doesn't seem to be able to control his tongue. You see, the really sad truth about the whole Shkreli phenomenon is how he's actually not out of the norm for pharmaceutical executives. He just happens to be the most outspoken and obnoxious of them. This is the surprise I had while I was researching this video, which is I saw a bunch of interviews with him. And the surprising thing about most of them was actually how much he sounded just like any other pharmaceutical executive. I mean, check this interview out on CNBC.
So what a lot of companies do is raise venture capital funding when they see an important market for a drug, rather than raising the price on the current patients who need it to survive and who have no other choice but to take it and pay the higher price. Why wouldn't you go that route?
Well, we did raise one of the largest Series A financings in history for a biotech company. We raised over $90 million. And we also feel that this is the more appropriate price for Daraprim. At this price, Daraprim is still actually on the low end of what orphan drugs cost. And we're certainly not the first company to raise drug prices.
Now, in reality, when he says that other pharmaceutical companies behave the same way, and many of them behave even worse, he's actually absolutely right. And that's the sad truth of it. As Americans, all too often, we pick villains we want to demonize. And in this case, Shkreli was deservedly so the person we decide to demonize. The problem with the pharmaceutical industry isn't just one single executive or even a bunch of executives. The problem is a system that essentially makes access to life-saving drugs something that can become a profit center for investors. This is a classic case of what economists call a market failure, because of the fact that you can't have competition for a drug that is patented, and people who need it to save their lives don't have a choice but to buy it. So there's no competition to essentially help find the correct price for the drug. And this market failure is exactly what the pharmaceutical companies have taken advantage of to move them to become some of the most profitable companies in America. Now, there was an effort by many Democrats to include in the Build Back Better bill a provision that would allow Medicare to actually negotiate with some of the pharmaceutical companies to create a countervailing force against their greed and desire to continually increase prices at the expense of people who need the medicine. And, by the way, of society as a whole. Because in many cases, the people who end up footing the bills for these expensive treatments are either the taxpayers through Medicare and Medicaid, or the rest of us through the health insurance that our employers pay. I mean, just think of it this way. If employers could pay less for the health insurance they have to for their employees, then that'd be more money they could just pay to you in your wages. That's how it happens in most countries, by the way. That provision, though, was killed thanks to Kyrsten Sinema's opposition. Because, of course, as we know, as a result of the 100% opposition of Republicans to any effort to try to give relief to people from the high cost of drugs, we need every single Democrat on board. And Kyrsten Sinema, as it turns out, is one of the biggest recipients of pharmaceutical PAC money among Democratic senators. So, gee, I wonder what's going on there. The point is, though, that we can't simply point to irresponsible jerks like Martin Shkreli, throw them in jail, fine them, and think, oh, we've solved the problem. Because the reality is that the system is the problem. A system in which healthcare is viewed as something that can be a source of profits. Because as I've pointed out to my students, when I'm collapsing from a heart attack in front of the class, I sure hope that they're just calling 911 and not negotiating with different ambulance companies to see which one they can get the best price from. Hey, if you like that video, you might want to check out this one. It'll give you more ammunition to fight off the MAGA crowd and stand up for our small d and big D democratic values. I'll see you in the next video. In the meantime, let's hope for continued progress. Thank you.